Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome to another live edition of the Galaxy CDs, Rocks, and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and you will be excited to know that I am not the only person here today. I know I'm excited about this. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. So without any further ado, let's just get straight into it. Please give a warm Galaxian welcome to Liz O'Kane.
Woohoo! Good morning.
Welcome. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with us here on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Normally you're in my ear when I'm out on my walk listening live, and I get
we're
to be here
interrupting
today.
Walking time right now, right? This is normally,
Yeah, this is walking time. So we just we went out a little bit earlier today.
Awesome. Well, before we get too deep into it, if you would just take a minute to let everybody know who you are, where they can find you on the internet and all that sort of stuff. Just give us a quick 30-second introduction to yourself.
Yeah, I'm Liz. I own Colorado Reworn. I'm Colorado Reworn across eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, and Depop. And I am most active on Instagram at Colorado Reworn.
Simple enough, yeah?
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing reselling? What was your kind of entry into it and what got you started?
Yeah, so I was active duty Air Force, and
Okay.
I had just had my son, 2002, and I had outgrown maternity clothes, heard of this little website that you can run auctions on. You know, you take a picture, take the film to Walmart, get it developed, scan it, eBay. And I learned real quick that people pay more than what I paid, and I could
Right.
make a little bit of side money. So I did it on and off, sometimes more serious than others over the years. I retired in 2016. And I knew, like, the year leading up to it, that this was what I was gonna do when I
Yeah.
retired,
Yeah.
instead of going and pursuing a new job.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And was there anything like from the previous career experience that you feel like has helped you as you transitioned into this? Because they're quite, I don't know what you did with the Air Force,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
they sound like they could be quite different things.
Yeah, they could, but I think that any job or career that anybody's ever had, you're gonna find little nuggets of what you can bring with you. So for me, I worked by myself a lot. I did recruiting for 7 years. So I was by myself a lot. And I had to manage things on my own a lot, which really helped with the transition because I'm doing this by myself. My son takes my pictures now, but I transitioned to doing this by myself. So that was pretty easy for me. I also got involved in the eBay community. So I went from my military community to my eBay community and learned that just like in the military or any other career or job that you have, you find the people to lean on that are good at what they do and you learn from them. And I did the same thing with the eBay community. I was on eBay up until probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago.
Really? So what other
Yeah.
platforms do you currently sell on?
So seriously, eBay's my number one.
Right.
Poshmark's my number two. And then Mercari and I get married and divorced a couple times a year. I'm testing Depop for a good 3 months. I'm only 2 months into it, but life has been hectic. Summer slowdown. I just took
Right.
the summer to just take care of shipping, really.
Yeah.
So,
So what's your comparison if you were going to do like a 30,000 foot overview,
mhm.
eBay versus Poshmark versus Mercari in your experience? And what are the type of things you sell? Are you like mostly fashion or what's your kind of big
Yeah, so
categories?
so I do mostly fashion. I probably 95% fashion, the rest linens, because to me, I can find them, they're easy to sell. I'm kind of a half and halfer. So I do like half thrifted or half pre-owned items, and the other half is retail arbitrage. So I've got a couple spots that I know where to go, when to go to get the great deals. And that's worked out for me. So mostly fashion, little bit of linens, couple odds and ends. If I just looked last week and I'm about 65% eBay
Yeah.
and pretty much everything else Poshmark, Mercari, Depop takes up like 1%.
Right. Right. I'm similar. I sell on three platforms, primarily
Yeah.
eBay, Etsy, and Mercari. And eBay pretty consistently is around 80% of my business.
Nice.
Etsy is probably 12 to 15, and then Mercari is like the scraps at the end of the week, kind of deal, but it just hasn't
Yeah.
really taken off. Um, I see from time to time people like talking about Mercari is just fantastic for them. So obviously, some people are doing really well over there, but
Yeah.
that's not, unfortunately, really been my experience. Um, how do you contrast what happens on, say, Poshmark versus what goes on eBay? Why do you think, other than just user base, are there differences in the platforms that cause that huge of a disparity, or is it just population?
S I honestly believe, I mean, it's a platform, right? So we're gonna get the platforms to kinda drive some of our traffic. We drive some of our own via however we do it. Um, I think I have more success on eBay simply because it's a bigger platform.
Yeah.
I have success, I say success, on Poshmark, um, simply because over the years I've learned, right? So it requires a little more babying, to
Right.
where
I was going to say,
yeah,
I feel like from other people that I've talked to that Poshmark requires a lot more kind of interaction from you as the seller, where other than like setting up promotions or discounts on eBay, it's kind of a set
right.
it and forget it.
Right, and that's kind of how I treat eBay. I've kinda tightened in over the last year with eBay. I used to just set it and forget it, run 1 sale a month, send out offers, and that was it. I have been relisting a little more often there. I used to say like, "Oh, at about 2 years, I'll relist it." Um, then it was a year, and now it's like, maybe every 3 to 6 months now is what I'm trying to get to. But the Poshmark algorithm's simply different. Their default is just listed. So when you go on Poshmark and do a search,
Okay.
your default search is just listed. So where eBay, it could be best match or whatever I don't know, it's been a while since I've looked, but I think it kinda locks in whatever you say or whatever your
Right.
last search was.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different that way, so that's why it's important, I feel, to do that over there. Call me a horrible Poshmark seller, but I can't do this on my own. I use a bot.
Do you? Okay. I was
I
going to ask
do.
because that seems
Yeah.
like it would be, if you've got a significant number of listings, it would be a tremendous amount of effort to do without a bot or a VA or some kind of
Yeah.
assistance, unless yeah, that's the only place you sell and you've got a really small shop.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I think I wanna tend to just my gut tells me a majority of Poshmark sellers are using bots.
Yeah.
Some of them that have, if you just have a couple 100 listings, Poshmark's made it easier over the years to make that happen, to
Right.
share, to list. Um, Poshmark's rolled out their promoted closets too, which is another way to kind of boost sales over there. And quite honestly, when I do Google searches for fashion, so for any clothes, if I'm looking for stuff for myself, Poshmark typically comes up before eBay if I go to Google
Right.
shopping.
Yeah. Now, you may not have any insight into this, but
Mhm.
do you think they're paying extra to rank higher in those? I assume those are like sponsored results on Google. Do you think they're outbidding eBay? I'm always curious about
I
how
know,
that
I know.
stuff surfaces to the top.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. I honestly do not know. I know very little, I mean, about, how Google picks up search and
Right.
how Poshmark is paying or how they go about the bid process, or really how listings are set up. So for quality and SEO and how these platforms send it out to Google to be put up, and it's not even just sponsored listings, it's
Sure.
just whatever comes up in search. So I always find that interesting too. That's why when I started cross posting, I was like, well, I can see how that's important because I'm going to get Google
Right. No,
involved
absolutely.
in the search and at least it'll get people in. I was actually just looking at my eBay traffic to see, and I wish Poshmark had this. They don't. Their reports are minimal. But I was
Yeah.
just looking on eBay like the last week, about 23% of my traffic has come from Google.
Really?
It has, which
Yeah.
is more than normal. It's normally like 10 to 15%,
Yeah.
but I'm not paying for anything right now. I'm not just
Right.
regular general promoted listing,
Yes.
right?
The
That's
change
what
of
it's
the
called
name.
now?
They just made
Yeah.
another change yesterday. Change it from sold to orders. They're just
Oh,
randomly like renaming things all over the site. Uh, I, I suppose that one technically makes some sense, but it's once you've established something for the amount of time that some of that stuff has been established, it's jarring.
Yes,
Especially
yes.
the casual users who are not on there all the time. You go on if you've been off for 4 or 5 weeks and everything's got a different name or it's in a different place with all the changes they're making. It's really pretty daunting. I know why people are intimidated by eBay. So
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, let me jump into the chat here and say a couple of quick good mornings. Lord Jake Ryan is with us. Welcome. Thank you. And Operani on eBay, thank you so much. Absolutely looking forward to today's discussion. If you're in the chat and you have anything you'd like to ask Liz, please feel free to leave it in there. I'm sure she would be happy to answer more questions than just mine. So you mentioned like the analytical data, and I feel like eBay is pretty good about that. Some of the changes they've made recently, it feels like they've become a little bit less transparent. What are your feelings on, and I know you do a lot of deep dives into looking at data. So kind of walk us through that process and why you think that's important.
Yeah, well, I'll first say that I'm I'm a nerd. I like this stuff, right? But I'm not a data expert, right? Like I could just try and put the pieces together for my store. So I look at it, but I don't live and die by it, right?
Right.
Like I just have so much other stuff to focus on, just like we all do. But it's great information to know, like, where's my traffic coming from? Like I haven't run a sale in almost a month. I haven't paid for promoted listing, what is it called? Like pay per
Priority,
click.
I think now.
Yeah, I haven't done that in, since what, April or May. So the traffic that I'm getting, I can kind of see just like organic. So if I can see that my Google stuff's jumping up, well, why is that? Am I using better keywords? Am I, what's working? It's good to know, but I don't change my entire business model if I see a
Right.
little spike in a dip, right? Like it got caught somewhere. Maybe I advertised on, maybe I put something on Instagram, right? Um, the analytics. So I do watch my traffic just to see like, hey, what's going on? I haven't had any sales. Oh, but my traffic and my impressions have been steady. So
Right.
what am I doing? Like the traffic's coming in. Well, I know for me, the traffic's steady. My sales are down. It's because I haven't listed anything in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a me. Um,
So I'm just curious about what your opinion on that might be, because I feel like if your traffic and your views are consistent, then stuff is still being surfaced to people,
yeah,
which strikes me as where the algorithm would break down. If you're not listing, it stops showing you to people. If your items are still getting views, what's changed that they're now not getting sales? That one is a mystery to me because you didn't change anything on the listing. It's the same listing that's been there for
yep.
2 months, 6 months, a year, whatever, since you last did an update on it. And 3 weeks ago, at X number of views, you were selling whatever 3% conversion, and now it's 2.5. And
Right.
it's a mystery to me.
So this is the way I view it for myself. So if everything's the same, so I've been going and not like giving reselling a full since like April. I've just been traveling and it's just been
Yeah.
crazy. It's summer slowdown. I
Right.
figured I'm taking this. That's why I do what I do, so I can have my time. And I know summertime,
Right.
just busy. So I know if my traffic is on par, my impressions and my clicks are on par, that's telling me people don't want my item. So if they're clicking on it and they're backing out, what am I doing? Right? So you can look at your store as a whole, or you can look at each individual item. So
Right.
just depending on what you're selling or categories or how many items you have, you can break it down to the item to see where your traffic hit and when it dipped off. If I know that I just got 300 sweaters in and I just listed 300 sweaters and they're all doing good and then the sales dropped off, I'm going to do a Google search for that item because they might be on sale somewhere else.
Right. I was
They
just going
might
to
not be
say,
popular anymore.
right. Or that. But how big a factor do you think like regularly checking your pricing is? Because I don't
Mhm.
really do that because I compensate for that by every month I run anything in my store that's over a year old goes on sale, and I try to kind of catch price changes that I may have missed.
Right.
Again, I've got 11,000 listings, so it's very difficult for me to individually look at those on a weekly or monthly basis. That's all I would get
Right.
done.
Well, exactly, exactly. So you kind of put your time in, like, and we are 2 different buyer base, right? Like what I
Right.
do, I probably would do different if I were in your category. But I can see it because clothing just depending on what it is, goes up and down. We
Sure.
can be seasonal. Books, I don't know. In my mind, books aren't seasonal except for when school starts. I could be
Right.
totally wrong. Um, but I look at the seasons. I look at, well, I was killing it last month and this month is horrible. What's different? Oh, I ran a big sale last month.
Right. Yeah.
I haven't done that this month, or I was promoting at a higher rate last month and I'm not this month. I kind of see my differences. Um, I'm somebody that tends to do things for a longer period of time to test it out to get better data. So if I run a sale, I might run it for 2 weeks. There are
Right.
times I'll do, like, if it's a higher percent sale, I'll run it for a shorter amount of time. But if I'm running a 15% off sale, I might run it for 2 weeks just to gather the data.
Right.
Um, if I promote at a higher rate, I make note of, I did this rate from this date to this date, but then I dropped it back down. Or if I do any other form of advertising, I kind of keep that in the back of my mind. So I know if sales were great last month, but not this month, and I've listed the same amount of items, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to look and be like, well, I was running a 30% off sale and I'm not doing that right now. So maybe that was working for me.
Right.
Um, I hope
So
that answers it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you did over the mostly over the spring when eBay was running all their promotions, try promoted listings, whatever priority. It wasn't called that then.
Right.
And they gave the $100 credit for the offsite ad program. You tried all of that, and your Instagram, for anybody that's not following you on Instagram, they absolutely should, because that kind of
Thank you.
research that you do is so interesting to me. But what was your kind of experience? Share with us kind of what you found and what you learned by trying those tests and running it for 30, 60 days, whatever it was.
Yeah, so I did it was promoted listing advance at the time, so
Yes.
priority now, a priority campaign, and anybody, if you run these and you're thinking about this, there's actually a little button that says something like "Ask for help," and somebody from the ads team will contact you. So I ran, like, the first week and I'm like, "I'm lost. Ask for help." And they're like, "Okay, let's look at it. Maybe you should change this." So they gave me advice and I changed it. I ran this campaign for an entire month. The spend versus what I got back probably wasn't the right, yeah, like, I wouldn't do it the way I ran it. Um, I just did my whole entire store,
Yeah.
set a cap, and, like, I did every single day practically, I documented. If you go to my Instagram, right under in the
Right.
profile, there's a highlight to where you can see every day from my stories. It's kinda boring when you watch, like, 30 of them in a row, but there's some times where I show charts, and if I were to do it again, I would still consider doing it, but not for my entire store. Which
Right.
is what I did because I wanted data. The whole reason I did it is they're giving me
Yes.
money for free because I wanna pull in data. And what I mean by that is when you run a promoted if you do a priority campaign
Right.
now, you're going to get reports that helped me so much in the way I list my items. For example, I shared one of them. When people search for clothing, they search for the word size. So I was able to get a report that showed me the exact search query that every single buyer put into that search bar, exactly down to capital letters. So if you uh, searched coffee mug and you use lowercase, and I searched coffee mug and did capital C, capital M, those were two different search queries. It was that specific of
Right.
what people are actually putting in. And I learned that with clothing, people actually search the word size. I found through that if I were a buyer, that buyer went through and said, "Gray t-shirt, size small," and the seller doesn't have the word size, your listings aren't gonna show up
Right.
because that's not a specific that gets picked up in search. Now, it could be totally different for other categories, and that's why, like, that information was so valuable to me. Um, I did learn that it's great if if you have a lot of a certain product or seasonal
Yes.
items. So if you sell a lot of textbooks, I would totally do that coming into school season or whenever students buy books.
Right.
I would be very specific and very, not penny wise, but, like, really thinking about what I'm putting out there and what I'm paying for.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Because if you're going to invest the money in the
Right.
program, you really need to do what you did, the back end of it, and say, okay, here's it. Maybe it didn't make money,
Right.
on the program itself, but I got that invaluable lesson to adjust my listings. I assume you went in and added that probably to all of your listings.
Yes, and I started doing it a couple years ago, but there were still some items I'm like, "Oh, I didn't have that in this."
Right.
It's through that and through learning from other people outside of my category and just following other sellers, where I get this information or motivation to try things like this. Like, "Oh, let me do a deep dive like this into my own store."
Right. Let's hop back over here into the chat and see
Yeah.
if we've got some more operating on eBay. How many hours per day or week do you spend on listing, including researching comps?
So for me, I lately, not a whole lot, but typically I will work 50, 60 hours a week. Research, I've been doing this so long and in the same categories. I honestly, so what I my process is my son takes the pictures, uploads it into my listing program. When I'm ready to list, I just right click Google image search and my research is there. So I get keywords, average pricing, and just go from there. I'm
Right.
somebody I only list um buy it now, and I put best offer on everything.
Yes.
It works for
I'm,
me.
yeah, I at any given time might have 3 or 4 auctions running because you'll
Okay.
pick up that really random thing that you just can't find any information on, particularly in older books. So I'll usually start those at an auction just to see what happens, and then if nothing happens, then I'll just pull a price out of the air and put it buy it now. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer also in the best offer thing, so I spend probably 30 to 35 hours a week on listing and research. The rest of the time is pulling and packing orders, and then, of course, being outsourcing 10, 12-hour day or whatever. Last week, it was 3 of those because I got a couple of big buys, so I was on the road for 3 days, but it was worth it.
Right, and I think that I kind of misunderstood the question as I'm reading it back now. So, my 50 hours a week includes everything. That's
Right, right.
shipping and shopping and listing.
Thoughts on the percent rate for promoted listings? That's from Dennis. I think it's Dennis Hubbard.
Honestly, for me, I think it's gonna be very specific per store. Like, what works for me may not work for you. I know for my category, I just have it's probably not the best way to do it, but I have my entire store on a flat rate
Yeah,
and I swap it up. So in April, like the mid to end of April and the beginning of May, I was traveling, but I kept my store I put it on vacation, but I allowed people to buy things. What I did during that time is I upped my percentage from like 4% up to 10%. I ran like a 10% off sale, right? So it kind of offsets each other. So instead of running a 20% off sale,
sure. Right.
I was like, it's not exact math, but and I also know that anybody listening that doesn't know how this works, when you change your promoted percent, that's good for your buyer, anybody that clicks it for 30 days. So I always expect that that could go on for 30 days, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. That's kind of how I up and down my promoted listing. I did once I think I upped it to like 15% just to see how it worked. I did it for a week. I was gonna do it for 3 weeks, and I'm like, "Nope,"
Yeah.
because it was just eating. It was eating a lot. I made more sales, but not enough to justify
Right.
what I was paying.
And that is probably the key to find where that break even point or better is. How much discount or how much promoted whatever fee am I willing to pay where I can still make some money on the sales? And
Right.
I've landed on that kind of 7-8% range for my stuff, and I'm the same way. I just do a blanket. My entire store gets the same rate. 80
Right.
odd percent of my listings are all in the same category. I know different categories probably would want different percentages, but again, for me, it's just easier to just do the blanket. I'm doing 8. I started at 5
Mhm.
last summer during summer slowdown. I bumped it to 7. This summer, I bumped it to 8 just for a little bit here in the summer. I'm probably going to take it back down to 7 because I haven't really noticed that big a lift at 8. So
Yeah, and that's just what I love is that we can talk to each other and learn from each other. It's like, I may do it this way. It sounds like we're kinda doing the same thing, and somebody in the
Yeah.
chat or somebody listening may do something different, and if that works for them, share that information for people in your category, right? I don't know about other categories, but clothing can get up to 15, 16, 17% in some cases.
Right.
I don't know that I would ever recommend that unless you're buying things for a penny and selling them for $100.
Right.
You know? I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." The thought of that just I couldn't do it.
Right. No, because it's all
Yeah.
your cost of the item did not change when you decided to pay more for the thing. So you're just giving away your own profit when you do that. So you've
Yep.
really got to balance how much you can afford to spend on ad, whether it's running offsite ads or doing the promoted listings priority, whatever it is. That's a decision you've got to make based on your margins and what you're trying to accomplish. So it can be pretty complicated.
It
Hollywood
can, and
Reseller, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, and there's certain items that I really wanna move, and I'm actually thinking about coming up this weekend. I'm just gonna take those items that I wanna move, and I'm gonna try for a week at a higher percent and see how that goes, then bump it down to regular and then put those items on sale. Just to so I can look and see, did I drive traffic here? Did I drive traffic there? And I typically don't do things for a week because I don't feel that it's enough time to really get a lot of data, but I just wanna play with these items because honestly, I just need to move them, and they were, like, low cost
Right.
items that I just wanna move.
Right.
So
And
I
I'd
may
be
play
real,
around with that.
yeah, I was going to say, I'd be real curious to see what the results are, whether a sale price or a bigger discount on the item is more effective than a higher promoted fee, which in theory at least should put it in front of more people.
Right,
I talked about, I think last week, my stats are really interesting because I'm getting more clicks on organic impressions, but I'm getting
right,
more sales on promoted impressions. So there's a lot of wasted click or a lot of wasted impressions on the promoted
right,
ones, but I'm on the standard one, so I'm not paying for any of those. It only counts when somebody makes a purchase. And
right.
the buyers that are clicking through on that program, at least in my case, are turning into buyers. So,
Yeah, and that's it's weird to look at that and be like, "Okay, what's the difference?" Right?
right.
Sometimes we just can't figure it out, right?
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
a lot of
yeah,
times with an individual person, it may just be that that person was primed to buy and that item surfaced, whether it was organic or promoted, and it wouldn't have made any difference.
right,
They were
right,
just,
and
you had the right item at the right time. But when you look like you do, when you look at it in aggregate, you can start to tease out like little details.
yeah, I think I'm at 5% now, and I just checked this morning, 74% of my sales have come from promoted listing the
Right.
last 31 days.
Yep.
That's a
Yep.
lot.
It is. And
That's a lot.
I know a lot of people, and I was one of them, like I said a couple weeks ago, hand up. I did not want to do it. But when you see that it can become that big a piece of your business. Now, I made the argument when I originally started doing it that I would guess that probably half of those you would have gotten anyway with organic. But if I can do an extra, whatever, third, if I can increase my business 30%, am I willing to pay a little extra on that other half to get there? And then for me, the math made absolute sense. So,
Right, and it's an individual thing. I have, like, a low cost, medium sale price, so I'm not a volume seller. So and I understand it's totally different depending how your business model set up. If you're a volume seller, what I do is not gonna work, right?
right,
So I know that this item right here, if it sits for 9 months, it's not making me any money right there,
right.
right? But if I can get it moving faster and get more eyes on it, driving that traffic, more
Yeah,
traffic should create more sales,
in theory.
in theory.
Hollywood Reseller asks, do you happen to put your store on vacation mode multiple times a year? And how many days shipping and handling do you have?
I do put my store in vacation mode, and I always let people purchase, and I just make a notes to where I can copy and paste or just do a shorthand in my phone to where if somebody buys something, I can just put VM for vacation mode, and it types out a standard message to them saying, "Thank you for your purchase. Just to let you know, your item will ship out on X day."
Right.
I don't really change my handling because vacation mode does that
Yes.
unless I want extra time when I get home.
Right. So how
Then
effective
I'll
have you found vacation mode to be? Is it do your sales take a significant hit when it's on vacation mode, or does it remain pretty consistent? People are willing. Yeah, again, they found the item they wanted. You had it. They're willing to wait an extra 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, and when I say vacation mode, I'm not taking 3-week vacations. I'm not taking 2-week vacations. I'm putting it on vacation for 3 to 5 days.
Right.
If I were only gone for, like, 2 days, I'd probably just change my handling time. Um, but I keep 1 day handling.
Okay.
The last 2 back-to-back vacations, I did vacation mode, put it off, like, the day before I got home, but I put my store on 3-day handling, and I've just been so busy, I've kept 3-day handling since the end of April.
Yeah.
It's
And didn't see
nobody's
any.
complained.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that my traffic and my sales have gone down simply because I haven't been listing that much.
Right.
Um, but, when I was on those vacations, what I typically do is at the airport, I'll send out good offers, or I'll put my store on a sale, or I'll up my promoted listing rate just to kinda keep that interest going. But other than that,
Right. So, talking about listings, do you think, and again, this you
mhm,
may not have any particular insight into it, but is it the activity of daily listing, or is there like a number that you think makes a difference? Like if I do 5 listings, but I do it consistently, whatever, 6 days a week or 5 days a week, is that better for me than to do 20 in one day and then go 3 or 4 days and not do any and then do 20 more? Do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah, my thoughts are that nobody knows but eBay. And they're
Uh,
not giving up the juice. Trust me, I have every time I was like, "Tell me how," and they're like, boop, boop. Nope." But
so why,
this is
not to get too off
yeah.
on a tangent, why do you think that is? What's the benefit to eBay to not share how the algorithm works? You would think that if you said, hey, it works like this, you would get more sellers who would do it like that. And that would improve individual sellers' results and by extension, improve eBay's results. If everybody knew how it worked, I mean,
Mhm,
maybe I'm crazy, but it just feels
mm-mm.
like
No,
that was
no.
stuff you would want out there.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. Here's the way I think of it is they give us a lot of information on how the algorithm, like best practices, like the stuff that
Right.
they're telling us to do. Each little increment ups the algorithm, right? Like having clear photos, that's going to help you. Like all the stuff that they preach, like having keywords and titles, using your item
Right.
specifics,
Yeah.
do free shipping, do this, do that. Like, I don't play into all of the algorithm gaining games. I don't offer free shipping. I don't
No.
offer free returns. I offer returns. To where somebody next to me may not, and that's fine. You get to pick and choose, right? So all of those things go into the algorithm. Here's the thing. This is the way I think of it. If eBay were to say, here is the exact subset, it's going to change every single second based on what is getting listed, right? Like what's good, what's bad, buyer behavior. On top of that, if 90% of sellers were to follow that, it would totally change the algorithm and we'd all be exactly the same, right? And then you're going to have the bad seeds that come in and learn how to not I don't know how to
Game the
explain it.
system.
Kind of game the system, right? You're gonna have the bad and I really don't know how to explain that, um, but I think that with any algorithm, they're gonna keep some on the back burner,
Right.
right? And I think that it just changes every day, honestly. I don't you remember the days when it was like, "White backgrounds only, you have to have a
Right.
white background." It's because Google said it once at eBay Open on a stage, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then here we are 7 years later going off of that same information because Google didn't get back up on that stage and tell a group of people, "It's
Right.
okay to not use white backgrounds now," 5 years ago. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. That information, I think, just changes constantly to where we'd never be able to keep up with every last little speck of the 500 things that go into the eBay
Yeah.
algorithm.
Yeah.
So
Well,
my
and
thing is best
go ahead.
practices. I try
Yeah.
and follow as many best practices that make sense to my business, right? Free shipping is not a great model for my business, but it might be for yours. Um, you have to kind of look at what you're selling. So, but all of that brings me back to, listing every day versus group listing. I go against the grain and everybody's going to be like, you are stupid. I don't buy into listing every day. I don't buy into consistency. Buy-in is a negative, right? And I don't mean it negative. It's
Right.
just not the practice that I follow. Um, yes, I mean, listing every day theoretically is going to help you because you're getting more items on the platform,
Right.
right? But activity on eBay could be sending offers, shipping items, uh, you know, answering messages, all of that, starting a sale, all of that is activity,
Right.
right? Um, I have had nobody from eBay say, "Yes, you have to do this." Here's me and my thing. Went from me transitioning from a part-time seller to a full-time seller. I only had time to list on the weekends. And I'd go
Okay.
gangbangers and I'd put up a bunch of listings in one day and then let it ride and then the next weekend do that. I've kind of kept that whole thing. I won't strap myself down to I have to do 5 listings today or else I can't do XYZ. My thing is, if I'm here and I'm jamming out and I can pump out 50 listings are going out today. Why? Because a buyer can't buy from my death pile. A buyer can't buy from
Yes.
my draft bank. And so at the end of the day, the items are getting listed. The items are getting sold. It's whether you're going to do $1,000 this week and 500 next week versus 700. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
versus
Sure.
a consistent sales. I look at my sales in my store on an annual level. So, yeah, while I may be down 50% in the summer, I average it out through the year. And that's kind of how I view listing. Is that wrong? I have no idea, but it works for me and it
Yeah.
works for my schedule. So, one of the things that I always tell people that are like, I have a hard time getting 3 up per day because my schedule's inconsistent or I'm part-time or I can't do a draft bank, just get it done. Like getting it done is better than not.
Right.
And that's kind of how I feel because tomorrow I've got to do this and the next day I've got this to do and I'd rather just throw it all out.
Right. Well, like you said off camera before we got started, it's all about kind of setting those priorities. What you need to get done versus what would be nice to get done. It
Yeah,
makes a difference, and at some point you've got to decide. You can't go weeks and weeks and weeks without doing anything
right.
and expect to get good results. It does require some effort on our parts. So,
Yes, yes. And the days that I'm not sure, I'm like, how much money, how much value do I want to list today versus
yes.
I have to get 10 items? It's like, I need to get $500 up. I
Right.
need to get $700 up. I need to get $50, like depending on your seller level. Sometimes doing a dollar amount is easier than
Oh yeah.
doing a quantity amount.
Yep. Yeah, I know some sellers that's what they target every day. They want to list X
Yeah.
amount of dollars versus X amount of listings. So definitely makes sense. David Brown, Liz
Oh,
O'Kane is the best. Ah, she's a
oh,
great
Dave.
mentor. Helped me, Gringo Dave, get off to a great start of reselling. Thank you. And that's one of the reasons I wanted you on here because I know just from following you over on Instagram how helpful you have been to a lot of people
Thank
with the
you.
stuff that you put out. Playroom says that they're walking/running for you.
Thank you.
Operating on eBay, I was using 2% for everything until last week's live session when I talked about it. I upped a couple of existing listings to 7 and 10, and sure enough, they sold. So there you go. And sometimes it's that simple, just making a change in your price or the old delist, relist. Sometimes it's just the change. You might have even done 5% or 12%. It might not have made any difference. It was just doing something that kind of triggered the activity.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And that's great and that's what this community is about. Like, hey, you said this last week, somebody tried it and it worked for them.
Right.
That's what I love about this. And thank you, Dave. We're going to do a meetup. I run a meetup here. And Dave's in the meetup.
Nice.
Yeah.
Kaylee Debs, hello from California. Dennis Hubbard, do you use eBay's social marketing link feature to Pinterest, Instagram, or Facebook?
No.
No.
Um, so I actually did yesterday. I used it for Instagram. I have a business Facebook page, just never on it.
Right.
Um, Pinterest, I have never had an interest in Pinterest personally, professionally. I know it helps drive sales, especially in certain niches. Not in mine. It's just too fast paced. It's just never something that's caught my eye. But if you are on Pinterest, yes, you need to be using that feature. For eBay, I do it like I did it yesterday for Instagram. One of the things that I see people doing is they just go straight from their item, post it to their Instagram stories, and there's no link. It doesn't
Right.
put a link to your item. So you have to go in, put it to your Instagram stories, go back, grab the link, add the link via the sticker, and then post it if you
Yeah.
want to drive that traffic. It's rare on Instagram. It's my selling account, but I don't do any selling on it. It's really like reseller information.
Right. And that mine's the same way.
Yeah.
It's the tool I use to talk to other resellers and to like try to promote the podcast or the YouTube. I'm not using that as a way to drive sales. Maybe I should have a separate one for that purpose. I
Well,
don't know, but
here's Oh, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
I just like we talked about. There's priorities. There's only so many hours in the day, and like we talked about offline, the juice not being worth the squeeze. You could spend a lot of time doing that, and maybe not realize enough benefit. Time is my most precious asset. It's to me that's where I've got to invest what I've got, and I don't want to be chasing every last little social media thing to
Right.
try to generate an extra sale a month, if that makes sense. So
It
I
does.
don't I don't do either of those either.
No, what I do keep in mind though is when I do post on my business page, because it is my store, is I also make it buyer friendly. So if a buyer was to see my name, Google it, my Instagram account's the first thing that comes up. The last thing I want to do on my business account is say buyers suck. I can't believe
Right.
this. Yada yada. I just keep it to where if a buyer were to find me, it's just
Right.
neutral.
Yeah.
That's why I don't, yeah. I don't share, like I do my sales highlights, like, almost every other post, and I do that for other sellers. So it's
Yeah.
twofold. I do it for sellers. So maybe if somebody's following me that's learning, they'll be like, that I use this keyword or this item is selling right now and for this price. I've got one in my death pile. Let me get it listed.
Right.
Right. And I only share my highlights, but also to show buyers what kind of items I'm
Yes.
selling. Maybe that might get them interested in visiting my store. So it's
Right.
kind of twofold.
Yeah. What's not to get too far off the subject again,
Yeah.
but you mentioned like the negativity that can be prevalent with a lot of resellers. What's your take on like the reseller community at large on YouTube or on Instagram? It's for me, it seems like there's a lot of negativity out there. Oh,
There
and it's probably like anything. That's what surfaces to the top. The ones
Yes.
who have an issue are the ones that are complaining. The ones that had a great experience don't leave a review. They just enjoy the thing. So there's some of that I get. But
Yeah.
what's your feeling?
I just don't like, I just try not to buy into it. Here's the thing. A lot of people are like, "So you never get mad about it?" I was like, "Oh, no, no, no. I have a group chat where all of my complaining goes to,
Right.
with a small group of sellers that I've become friends with. And we all have the same problems. We're all gonna have that one thing. Like, it's easy for me to say, "It's just a negative feedback, reply to it and move on." Because in
Right.
the background, I'm going, "Are you kidding me? I can't believe." Breathe, let it out, and really at the end of the day, priorities, I just need to get more stuff listed, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, hanging on for an hour to do that. Now, with that said, I have my group chat. I have my community. Others, the millions of sellers out there may not have the community that I have or that you have. They're probably not listening, or they don't have somebody to do that with. So, they come to YouTube or whatever, and the people that do complain or whatever, they're kind of soundboarding, right? Kind of like
Yeah.
I'm doing in my group chat. So I don't fault anybody for doing that. It's just what I choose not to follow.
Right.
And there's going to be an audience for everyone. And I think that audience is the audience that is feeling that frustration at the moment, or that doesn't have the private community to really let loose, right? Because I
Right.
let loose, but on the
Yeah.
outside, it's not productive. For me, it's not productive.
Right. And I feel like there's two messages there. One is that you need to have that outlet for your own
Yes.
mental well-being. You've got to, this is not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. You've got to be able to vent to someone. And the other for me is that when you go down those rabbit holes of negativity, it can become a downward spiral. It reinforces how you're already feeling. And then
Yes.
you get more negative, and then the next experience sets you off even that much more. So I think it's important to find people like you who are, more positive or at worst neutral about what's
Right.
going on in the community, so that I posted something on a Facebook group last week, and somebody was like, "Oh, that's, you're just bragging about this or that." And I'm like, "No, I'm trying to show people that despite it being summer slowdown, there is still opportunity out there. There are still people who are having success. We're not all ticked off and struggling all the time.
Right.
There are opportunities to go do well and make money. You just have to kind of do the work."
Right, which is why we all tune in to your channel. Like, you
Well,
have
thanks.
that positivity, but also I know that you're gonna be like, "Yeah, that's not like, mm-mm," you know? You're
Right.
you're not negative, but you'll say, "This probably isn't a good idea, or
Yeah.
this made me mad today, but we're gonna get over it and we're gonna do this." And that's why I appreciate your channel.
Well, thank you.
It's
I
what
appreciate
I'm
that.
yeah.
Operating on eBay asks, "Are you spending time cleaning and or ironing your items?"
I wash everything. If it's used, it just goes on a quick cycle, cold, little bit half the detergent, run it through, simply because I don't want my house to smell like a thrift store. I'm in my basement. So
Right.
my office is in my basement. I don't want it to smell like a thrift store. They all have their smells. Um, and that's just a me thing. Some people don't. I have the setup, I have a clothing rack right outside of the store, and anything that needs to be photographed, I just hang it up. If it needs to be steamed, I'll run a quick steamer over it. I used to spend time ironing and starching and putting things on a mannequin, and I have a mannequin, and she has not seen the light of day in 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't found a difference, and it takes
Right.
twice as long than to just put something on a hanger.
So is there like a dollar amount if you find like a super valuable item that you would do those extra little bits, or are you kind of just like, nah, I'm good regardless of the price?
Yeah, no, I think the last thing that I put on her was a suit, like a skirt suit, which is hard to get a picture of in the first place, just hanging. And I think, it was a couple $100. But I mean,
Yeah.
even my $100 items, I
Yeah.
lay it down inside. I've got a stand-up photo booth that I just hang a hanger in. It's got a white background and I just do it, or I just lay it on the ground and inside of there and take a picture.
Yeah. There you go again with the white background.
You know what? I know. It's just easy.
No, I'm the same. I don't use any of the AI backgrounds. I don't use the background remover. I've got just a white, it's an acrylic cutting board that I bought off Amazon. It's easy to keep clean. You just spritz it with some Windex and wipe it off. You got these dirty old antique books, and every 3 or 4 books you clean it off and you just keep going, and it works great. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with
I
you.
mean, if my photo booth came with gray or red or purple, that would just be up and I wouldn't think about it. Like I said, my son takes my pictures, he uploads them for me. So anything that's like needs a background remover, that's his job. I
Right.
haven't I've had to do my own pictures. He had surgery, so we're on like
Right.
week 7 of me, the couple things that I was like, "Oh, I gotta take my own pictures?" I was like, I think I posted a sale and I'm like, "Oh, that shirt is crooked." Like, I clearly took those pictures because my son takes pride in his pictures.
Right. Well, and I don't mind actually those little bits of imperfection. Like I know a lot of sellers, they don't want their hands or their fingers in the picture. And I actually don't mind that because I feel like it shows whoever is a potential buyer, I've actually got that thing in my hand. This is a picture of the actual thing. It's
Yes.
not, it's not a stock photo. It's not somebody else's photo. This is, I can tell because it's slightly crooked or it's whatever.
Right.
That may be crazy, but that's when I look at it as a buyer, those are kind of the things that I look for. So
Yep.
I'm not trying to be perfect.
Yeah, my thing is it clean?
Right.
Like, is it is it lay yeah, that's like, as a buyer, I don't need a all white background. I do my
Right.
search and
Yeah.
scroll.
Hollywood Reseller asks, any thoughts on Depop, pros and cons?
I
You're
mean,
fairly
really
new there, as you
yeah.
said? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've sold like 8 things there in the last 6 weeks, but I haven't listed anything new, maybe a couple here and there. Um, it's frustrating, but they also don't have fees. Like, I'm just paying a
Right.
payment processing fee now. Um,
And that's new,
I
by
think
the way, just as a couple of weeks ago, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. So, I use a third-party listing program, and they teamed up with them for the month of June. So, if you use that listing program, then you got fees for free. Then they announced that they must have used us as a test.
Sure.
And that's what prompted me to go on it. I was like, it's here. I'm gonna try it for 3 months, and I think I'm 2 months in, and I'll probably drop it. It's just not." So everybody says, "Oh, it's the young." Gen A, Gen Z, whatever, I don't sell that stuff, and
Sure.
people have bought like, I sold a Whataburger uniform polo. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was a
Right.
sale, and I didn't pay fees. Um, I tell everybody, if you can do it and it's not gonna be a huge cost to you, try it. Try
Right.
it for 2 months and see. And then you can just say, "You know what? That wasn't a good fit for me." And I think you and I were talking also, I kind of do these platforms and I'm like, "Let me give it 3 months and see if it was worth." Like, I can cross post for free, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not coming at a cost monetarily, it's coming at a mental cost.
Yeah.
I have to check in on it, I have to answer questions, I have to send, uh offers, I have to delist and relist, I have to track my sales, I'm getting a 1099, I've got to clean the is you have to figure out for you, is it worth it
Right.
to stay on a platform? You've got to figure out what's your threshold, $200 a year, $800 a year, $2,000 a year, and that's all, so really the cons is if you are an eBay seller that really wants your payment right now, if you are an eBay seller that says, "I can't believe my buyer didn't pay in 2 days because I sent an offer and they accepted," or whatever, Depop's not for you. Because you can send an offer, they can accept, and then they can just ghost you, and vice versa. They can send an
Jeez.
offer, you can accept, and then it's just a game whether or not they pay. Um, I've probably had like 3 or 4 people not pay after going back and forth. That doesn't bother me a whole lot, but I understand that it does bother other people, and that's
Right.
okay. That's why I was just saying it won't be for you, because
So
I have found that.
how do they handle those? So like if we've agreed on a price on an item, does that item show as sold or is it still available for other people to purchase while
It's
you're waiting for that person to pay?
Yeah, it's just a handshake. It's just like, "Oh, I'll take your offer, handshake. Are you actually gonna show up to my house?" It's like almost like Facebook Marketplace. "Oh, I'm coming tomorrow at 2." You keep it up, you keep it for sale because they might not show up, and half the time
Right.
they don't. So they're like it's not a binding contract when you accept an offer there, is
Right.
my
So
understanding.
but
It's not binding until they pay.
the item is still shown. So if I came along and saw the same thing, I could just buy it
Yes,
and the buyer who did not pay is just out. So it didn't
correct.
pull it down so that it's now no longer available for sale for 2 or 3 or 4 days or whatever. And then you have to go back in and cancel and relist and do all that.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, and I think eBay changed that a couple months ago too to where your items stay active, right? I wanna s
I don't I
If
haven't
anybody
noticed
knows for
that
sure,
on any of mine.
I I think if somebody hasn't paid, I can't remember, they did a change a couple of months ago, and I can't remember what it is, and maybe
Yeah.
I dreamt about it, I don't
Yeah,
know.
because I know I've had a couple that people have made offers and I've accepted, and they've taken a couple of days to pay here lately. And again, I talked about it last week. eBay tends to roll these things out in waves and phases, and they'll experiment with a subset of buyers and or sellers.
Right,
So it's very difficult sometimes. You'll see some because I see it all the time. People be on complaining about a particular issue or not necessarily even complaining, just questioning what's going on.
yeah,
And I'll go onto my eBay site and it looks nothing like what they showed in their
yeah,
screenshot. And I'm like, how you can't even be helpful in that situation because
right,
you might as well be on two different platforms. It's
right.
weird.
I know they talked about it, it was a thing for what may they could have rolled it back, just kinda like what you talked about with the feedback, right? Was it your the
Yeah,
last live? Um, I can still see the feedback stuff, so
right. Yeah, mine has not changed
no,
either.
mine hasn't either.
Hollywood Reseller also asks any thoughts on selling on multiple platforms, pros and cons.
For me, it's a pro.
Yeah,
It just drives more traffic to my stuff. Like I said, earlier, sometimes I'll go from eBay and also list on Poshmark. Those are my 2 serious ones, so those are the 2 I'll reference. But, because Poshmark shows up in Google more often than it does on eBay. So I'm kind of getting traffic from there. Um, my caution is when I started cross listing is I went on all the platforms all the time.
right,
And I wasn't able to concentrate and be great at the platforms that were performing. So I did scale way back. So eBay and Poshmark are my 2 money makers. Mercari,
right.
Depop will probably get dropped, but I'm still in my testing phase. Um, things about selling on multiple platforms when you start off, you have to change the mindset. So if you sell on eBay and you're looking at going somewhere else, you are no longer an eBay seller. You are an online seller. So when you set up your listings, you have to think about every single platform you're listing on. So I know that I put things in my title because on eBay, the description isn't searchable, right?
Right.
But on Poshmark, I could just list this as a shirt and the entire body is searchable. So you have to, so if you're a Poshmark seller looking to go on eBay, you need to know these things.
Right.
So I
Well,
see a
I
lot
think
of people
that's,
go, yeah,
yeah, one of the reasons people are so daunted by eBay
yeah,
is they give you so many options to describe and specify what your item is that as a new seller, it would be absolutely overwhelming. If you're coming from a platform as simple as what that sounds like, and then you got into eBay and you see 90 check boxes,
right.
you're like,
And
what
vice
in the world?
versa. And vice versa. On eBay, you could put shirt, and then there's all these item specifics: short sleeve, crew neck, gray, casual, athletic, and all that gets picked up in search
Right.
when you use the pull downs. And then you go to post to Poshmark, you don't get any of that. They
Right.
don't have item. They've got like 2 item specifics,
Yeah.
right? So you have to remember that you're when you make a listing and you don't want to have to list every single platform, you have to make a universal. So you have to think about
Right.
all platforms in one, which I think kind of trips some people up. I think you and I are fortunate. I think anybody that started on eBay first definitely has an advantage.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. And for what I talk about it all the time, I think cross posting is super important. When I look at my business, 20% of my business comes from sites other than eBay. And if I wasn't doing that, that's like a 20% haircut. I'm just
Yep.
losing that profit opportunity. It's again about the balance. Is it worth the effort? In these cases, for the two that I cross list to, I'm able to do it through some software and it goes pretty quickly and easily. So it's not a heavy burden.
Right.
Doing the delisting is not. In some cases, you can even have that automated as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes essentially almost a free money, other than just a little bit of time. And for me, that it makes it definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
Uh, Anyone else ever notice the increase of formations of reselling clicks over time?
I used to be part of the eBay discussion boards before, like, a long time ago, and there were clicks then. I'm
Right,
talking 15, 18 years ago on the eBay message boards. They were, you know, fashion selling went to vintage and children's fashion, and then that split up into, and then there's actually a Netflix documentary called Boss Babe? I can't remember, but it's about a seller that started on eBay, and Nasty Gal is the brand, but she started on eBay, and they have a whole scene on the eBay message boards of everybody being chatty. Things
right,
haven't changed. I mean, I think there's just more sellers and there's more avenues for clicks to form, Facebook
right,
groups, Instagram groups. I I aim wander. Just ignore it.
right. And I'm the same way. I try
Yeah.
to focus on my business. I'm like you. I have stopped watching a lot of reseller content for just that reason, that or the negativity. And something I talk about pretty regularly, if you're a regular viewer of the show, is just the amount of just misinformation that is out there. I'm on a Facebook group that I just joined, and a new seller will ask a question and there will be 3 or 4 different answers right off rip that are all 4 wrong. And I'm like,
Right.
man, if you came into this group hoping to get help, now you've got to wade through all of these wrong answers and try to figure out what's right. And it's just, I don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with that. It gets so frustrating.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'll keep up with some of them because I wanna know what's going on in the community, because
Right.
sometimes it gets catty, but for a good reason, and I just stay neutral. I mean, I used to be in, like, 50 Facebook groups, and I think I'm down to, like, 3 because I
Yeah.
don't have the mental capacity to just do
Yeah.
that anymore.
Yep. Astrocat, good morning, Liz. Could you describe your photo setup? My photos are just okay, and I'm really wanting to upgrade. Any recommendations on products, setup, etc.? Thanks to you too.
Hey, I'm just fortunate. I have, let me see if I can, yeah, okay. I have a stand-up photo booth right there. Um, The lights come on, it gives great lighting. I wouldn't say go out and spend $300 on it.
Right.
I started just with a little light bulb lamp. My thing is light consistency and a phone. Honestly, it's not a fancy setup. This is literally has a white background. I'm pointing at the screen. I'm not very good at this.
Right.
And I just hang a hanger from the top. I mean, and my store is Colorado Reborn if you wanna just go see some of the photos or whatever. Like I said, that's the setup. Sometimes I'll take it upstairs on just a plain colored sheet, put it on the floor, take pictures. Um, Again, like I said earlier, if it's a couple $100, I'll spend a little more time on it. I
Right.
might dress it up and whatever. For the most part, I don't worry about the backgrounds because they come out pretty good. If I do need to crop it out, I run it. I was an early photo room subscriber, so I'm still paying early day photo room,
Nice.
and I can't. And they're going to grandfather that forever. Um, so sometimes I'll run things through photo room, and if I do, they have a bulk shadow feature that just kind of lays a shadow to kind of help give it dimension because some things can look flat, right?
Right.
And I'll my son I say I will, my son does that for me,
Yeah.
or if I do my pictures, but that's it.
Yep.
I don't do anything. That's fancy, but at the time, I would think I was using a point and shoot. Wasn't even using a camera to take pictures.
Yeah. And I do
Or
everything on my phone. I do the photos, I do the listings, I do everything on the phone. Like I said, I have a white acrylic cutting board. It is surrounded by a white cardboard poster board, so it's white all the way around. I've got two LED desk lamps, and I have a softbox, like a photo lamp above that was sent to me because they sent me some for my YouTube setup, and it didn't have the screen with it.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
requested the screen, and they sent me a whole new lamp. So I was like,
Nice.
okay. So I just put that overhead. So I've got top down light and then light coming in from the sides. For me, the key is to have good lighting so that the thing shows up well, not a lot of glare, not a lot of dark shadows, so that people can see, again, are there any flaws? Is there anything I need to know about this item that they can tell really quickly in the photos? But yeah, nothing fancy here.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask you. I was like, do you find that consistent lighting is your best bet?
Oh yeah. No, for me,
It's
that
for me,
is the
consistent
key.
lighting.
Yep. Hollywood Reseller, thoughts on selling on Facebook Marketplace?
I don't do it. It's just a pain. Like, I
Okay.
used this when shipping on Marketplace started, I started, and it just got to be a pain, and I just didn't wanna do it. And I
Right.
don't do pickup. I just don't have time to,
Right.
like,
And I
stay here and wait.
Yeah, no, same. I've done a couple even on eBay where I've agreed to do local pickup and, change the listing and set up a time and then got no showed. And I've got too much other stuff to do to be sitting around waiting or rescheduling a time for a pickup. So I refuse them now. Nope, it's easier for me to ship. I know you're 2 miles away.
Right.
But I'm shipping sometimes 30, 40 items in a day. I don't want to take that extra time to do one private pickup. So no, and I don't
Now,
sell on Facebook Marketplace either.
I will say if I was selling furniture or big
Sure.
items,
Right.
absolutely, I would try it. But
Yeah.
with me, clothing, the questions it could be like, Susie from Sacramento, "Hey, can I try it on first?" I'm like, "I live 1,000 miles away from you."
Right. Yeah.
You know? Or people will be like, "Oh, yeah, I want it, but can I come try it on first?" No,
Yeah.
no. And that's the thing with clothing. So,
Right.
other categories could be totally different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you said something earlier, and in the back of my head, I'm like, that's why I don't sell clothing. I think you were talking about answering questions. As a bookseller, you don't get a ton of questions. Once in a great while, somebody will ask, is there a certain picture on a certain page or something like that? But there's just nobody's asking for extra measurements or anything specific about it. Where with clothing, I feel like you would probably get a lot of that.
Yeah. And we do, and I put it all in my listings. There's very few listings where I don't put it in, but that's just part of my process. I
Right.
have like on my desk here, I have a metal tape measure that's taped down. So as I'm sitting here, I use dictation. So I go under the description and I just say the size and I just talk it out and it goes away. So
Fancy.
I can just talk my way through it. I
Right.
recently started doing that. and that has helped so much.
Yeah. Now, is that a function of the software you use for cross listing, or is that how are you
It
doing that?
I use a MacBook, and somebody told me about it, so I Googled how do you use dictation on a
Nice.
MacBook. Yeah. So there's, like, on my desktop, there's a little microphone that can say wake up or sleep. And so when I'm ready to just talk and do measurements, I could just push it
That's awesome.
and talk my way through it. It's like I'm an AI bot for my
Right.
listing service. I don't know. But it
uh,
helps because when you're, think about measuring a book or how many you're flipping through it, you're typing, you're flipping through it, you're typing.
yeah.
Me, I'm like, I can just talk my way through it
Yeah.
and be done. The downside is if you listen to music or TV while you list, it's not going to work for you.
Right. Yep.
Trust
And
me,
I've
I've
always
tried it.
got music going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dennis Hubbard, Super Podcast. Thanks for sharing. Would you share again your Instagram site?
Oh, for me, it's Colorado Reworn, and it's just
Ahead.
all one.
Yep. Oh, it's
Thank you.
blocked by the chat there.
Oh.
Too many buttons to click.
Oh.
So we're at a little over an hour. We'll go kind of one more round. If anybody has any additional questions, I think there was one more that popped up there. Lord Jake Ryan only sold one piece of clothing, and it was a White Sox jersey. Someone asked me what the measurements were. Yep. I get a few. Sometimes I'll take a flyer. I'll be out at a sale and I'll see like a bunch of concert T-shirts or something, and I'll grab them and I list them, and I almost immediately regret it because I get the guy that wants to know what are the measurements pit to pit. And I'm like, it's got a tag in it that says it's a men's large. That's
Right.
that's how I buy shirts. I've never thought about that, and I get why people do, but that's again you're making decisions for your own business about how much effort you want to expend
Right.
to generate your business. So
And
for
and
me,
really
that's
about sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, for me, that's just one step too many. That's something I don't want to take the time to deal with. So
Yeah, and it's kind of what you know, right? Your
yeah,
knowledge. Like if I were to list books, I wouldn't be able to list as many books because I'd be like, "Wait, is it?" Because I don't know the flow. I don't know the process. What
right,
information do I need? Do I need the measurements? What year? I don't know how to find it. I have to Google it to where you'd be like, "How do you not know that?"
right, yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, it's all about, and I say this all the time. You can make money doing this in virtually any niche once you've mastered it, and that's why I always people ask, well, how should I start out? Well, start with something you know or something that you already own that you're familiar with, and you can kind of learn from there what the listing process is and how things work, and then you can advance into, okay, I'd like to do this or that, and you can start to expand your growth. But if I tried to do clothing, I would be totally confused about, all the different stuff that people might even ask about.
Right.
Like I said, I had never heard until somebody asked me on eBay for a pit to pit
You're like, "What
measurement.
is that?"
I'm like, I had to think for a minute. I'm like, what is he even talking about? And then I was like, okay, yeah, now I get it. So
Yeah, and it's so funny because, like, for men's clothing, I won't even do it half the time, and I never get questions. Women's clothing, if you know anything about women's clothing, like, the same measurements can go from a size 4 to a size 6 to an 8 to a 10, and
yes,
you just have to know,
yeah,
right? And
yep,
clothing shrinks, it stretches. It's just something that's standard in my practice. Not everybody does it,
right,
and that's fine because maybe they sell it for less money. They're like, "No, I'm a volume. Like,
sure,
I'm gonna do 50 a day and I'm not gonna give them measurements." And that's fine too, that's their business model. Um, I just do it so I don't have to answer the questions later, or when I do
yeah,
get the question, I can just copy and paste it.
right. Operating on eBay. Thanks for doing this. As always, 11 a.m. to noon Wednesdays goes like the wind. It does. It flies by. Ms. Lachey, hey everyone, late joining. No problem. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. With that, we're a little over an hour, so we should probably be wrapping this up. If you would share any last thoughts or tips for the audience, that would be awesome.
Oh my gosh. Uh, keep doing what you're doing. Don't be afraid to try something new. So if you're in a rut and you're like, "Nothing's working, but I think this is stupid or this is stupid or I'd never try it," give it a try. Whether it's starting a sale, starting a new platform, um, learning something new and improving on your listings, or really just trying something new. Don't be afraid to do it. And if it doesn't work, then you've learned and you can move on and try something else new. I think that's probably what I would leave with.
Yeah, and I was on Derek and Regina's Hump Day Hangout a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
and that was essentially what I said at the end was whatever it is that you want to do, just dive in, get started. You the first time you do something, you're not going to be good at it. The first listing you put up, the first pictures you take, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to feel weird. It's not going to be great. But every time you do it, you're going to get a little bit better, but you can't do that until you get started. So whatever it is that you want to learn and grow, you kind of got to just get in there and get it done. So yeah, for me, that is terrific advice. Let's see what we got in here. Fern Flip says, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Thank you to everyone who came out today and spent a little time with us. Liz, thank you so much for
Thank you
spending
for
a little
reaching
bit
out.
of your day. No, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. So
Thank you.
nope, thank you. With that, my friends, until next week, it's time to sell. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.